we have a great lineup today to cover a number of aspects in relation to the call for more accessible housing, adapted homes, smart and intelligent homes as well. And we're drawing together a panel of housing association members, people working across health and social care, research and development, and indeed product development and architecture as well. So in a moment, I shall sort of introduce our speakers. But for those of you who don't know about the Housing LIN, we have a fledgling group in Scotland, the Housing LIN Scotland, where we work with local authorities, housing associations and developers to sort of create a better environment for understanding the needs and preferences of an ageing population. We have a small steering group, and can I thank Norscot for being one of our founding sponsors for that. We really look forward to sort of growing that, but also working in Scotland to build on some of the work we've already done around technology for an ageing population and our HAPPI project. And a future project on SHAPE, and you'll see that the Housing LIN webinars are branded a little bit of SHAPE as well. More of that later this year. But we're working with a number of universities, trade and professional bodies to really, as I say, put the spotlight on really good practice, innovation, research and development that's coming really cutting edge across the country. And today is no exception. And indeed, earlier today, we also published a report on behalf of ISPA, led by the University of Stirling, on the work that they've been doing around ordinary accessibility across the private rented sector. Now, we probably won't focus on that today. We'll probably have a little bit more look on the social housing side and possibly into home ownership. But we're delighted that we're joined by Michael, the Chief Exec of Horizon Housing Association. We've had a long-standing link with you, Michael, so really delighted that you could come and talk a bit about the work that you've been doing on your manifesto leading up to the recent elections and how we can take that forward with you over the coming months. We've got a fantastic team event here with the project team from the Envision project. This was launched, I believe, last month. A fantastic report, and we're going to hear from Margaret, Amanda, and Kirstin on this. And it really follows neatly, I think, from Michael. And last but not least is Carla, the product development manager at Norscot, one of our founding sponsors, and some of the really exciting research that she's been applying and putting into practice as well. And she's going to give a resume. And please also do have a look at her recent blog for the Housing LIN. And as Chris said, we'll then have some time for Q&A before we draw this happy hour to a close. But it gives me a great pleasure to invite Michael to kick off. So, Michael, can I hand over to you?
Thanks, Jeremy. Just give me 2 seconds, folks, and I'll get my slides up, hopefully first time. Can we all see those okay? I can't see anyone on the screen now, the way it's set up.
That's perfect, Michael, yeah.
Okay, well, thanks very much for having me along, Jeremy and the team. My name's Michael Driscoll. I'm the Chief Executive at Horizon Housing Association in Scotland, and I also chair the Scottish Accessible Housing Network. I'm going to spend sort of 10 minutes just talking you through the pre-election sort of call to action that we released in relation to accessibility and some of the key areas that we focused on within that. So just quickly, a bit about Horizon. So we manage just over 800 homes that's spread across 12 local authority areas in total. We're also part of the wider LINK group, of which there are a range of different companies that are on the screen, and we cover about 15,000 customers in total. And we're spread across all local authority areas in Scotland, so we have a really broad reach of services across our entire business. Horizon is the specialist within our group in relation to accessible housing. We created and chair the Accessible Housing Network, which is a group of local authorities, housing associations, voluntary sector organisations, health and social care partners, whole range of different organisations that are involved. And it's a space for us to collaborate on things within the accessible housing space that we want to work together on. We do a lot of work on policy and partnership within housing, health and social care, work with different universities, other providers. There's a big niche, and we're involved in a lot of research projects in that space as well. So that's a little bit about Horizon. In terms of our pre-election call to action manifesto that we released, I suppose there's three areas to I suppose give you the overview of why that was mattered to us at that point. And there's a couple of key things. Within Scotland, a number of, in fact, probably most local authorities have released housing emergencies. So they've stated they're within housing emergency within their housing department. So they're struggling with the pressures that are on the system. That includes homelessness, accessibility, every aspect of the housing service is experiencing those challenges. Linked to that, in Scotland, we're experiencing an ageing population across the whole of the UK and Scotland also, where by 2045, we're expecting 1 in 4 people to be over the age of 65. So that mixed in with the existing housing emergency, mixed in with the pressures that are already in place within the health and social care sector, not just around homes, but on pressures on general services, delayed hospital discharge, rising care demands. So these three, housing emergency, pressure on health and social care, and ageing population, are three challenges that overlap. And we think that accessible housing sits at the centre of all three of those. So some stats just to start off. And I suppose what I've got here is what the current challenge is, and then what's coming at us. So within Scotland, there are around 100,000 disabled people who are living in homes that do not meet their need. 61,000 people who are in need of an adaptation. That could be anything from small adaptation up to much larger, full retrofit. Around 1% of our stock is wheelchair accessible. That's an approximate figure. And there's around 10,000 disabled people on housing waiting lists. So that is the extent of the current problem in relation to accessibility within the Scottish housing system. Now, what's coming down the line, and there are far more stats on this than what I've got on the screen, I've only got a short period to talk over this, is that there's a projected increase in the number of people in Scotland that are over 65 by 2045 will go up by 30%, which is a massive increase in quite a short period of time. Linked to that, there will be an additional 300,000 people who are projected to be over the age of 75 within the next 25 years. So if you think about that reflected on the previous slide with the challenges that are there, we've also got this rapidly aging population, which within a currently struggling system, coming at us both at the same time. So within our, I suppose our vision for our sort of call to action, it was about everyone should have a home that's safe, inclusive, enables independence, and that's regardless of their age, ability, or background. And we structured that around 4 areas. It was around homes being designed well. So step-free access, usable space, features that work from day one. It was about making sure that properties are adaptable so they can last a person's lifetime where possible. You can't cover every eventuality, but where possible, they're designed that they can be adapted over time. There's a strong focus on looking to use and access all tenures, given that the private sector within Scotland is a large chunk of the market in addition to the social rented sector. There needs to be thinking out with of just the socially rented sector around how we can support accessibility or accessible housing and promote more accessible housing across the system. And then I think generally some more links between how the systems work across different service providers. So that's around advice, how people access adaptations, which within Scotland is done in different ways depending on your tenure, and just the general support that's available for people to enable them to make their own choices in terms of the home that they either currently live in or the home that they aspire to live in. So those were the 4 sort of key areas that shaped our vision. So there are a number of individual calls to action within the manifesto. So there's a lack of a national strategy around independent living. Scotland have previously had a strategy around ageing, but it's out of date. And there is a need for a national strategy linked to targets around how we're going to tackle, this, what I would describe based on the previous stats as a slowly coming car crash, where we have all these conflicting priorities, and then we have this sort of this aging population building under an already struggling system. Understanding or coming to a definition of what a truly accessible housing standard is, that was shaped around finalising the Housing for an Area Needs Review that has been going on for quite some time, although will be starting shortly, I believe. but it's been on the agenda for the Scottish Government for quite some time, so a need for that to be finalised or to take place. More structured and secure and expanded adaptations funding. So what we're talking about there is trying to future plan better around adaptations funding rather than being provided, a year to spend adaptations funding, which becomes quite a rush. Being able to plan that within our investment cycles, whereby if there was more long-term funding linked to adaptations, we could actually plan that better in line with some of our planned investment work that we do, and make savings from that as well, because we're already doing work within those properties. We focused on engaging in the private sector, and that was thinking about how can you incentivise, or how can we more heavily involve the private sector in, I suppose, being more interested, more involved in the accessibility agenda. Thinking around, is there a possibility of incentives for developers? How can we make planning guidance more flexible for them to use? What opportunities are there around regulation and retrofit, which was thought process around More Homes Scotland when that comes into play, and how that can be used to try and engage the private sector further. Some discussion in there regarding, do we actually know where all of our accessible stock is and what the actual demand is? And do we have more work to do to track, report and plan for need? We do provide a lot of statistics, whether it be to Scottish Housing Regulator, through the ARC, or any of the statistical returns that we do. Is there more we could do in terms of gathering, I suppose, the baseline in terms of accessibility across our stock and the demand in relation to that, so that we can start to build that picture? We have some of it, but we think we can do more there. And then finally, it was about putting the lived experience at the centre of everything that we do. So involving disabled people and older adults in designing policy and planning, and making co-production a core requirement across all of these areas that we've spoken about. So these were the sort of 6 key areas that we covered across our call to action. It's a much broader policy space than that. Thinking behind it was that we wanted to provide sort of 5 to 6 key areas where action wasn't easy, but you could focus in and come up with some actions within, as opposed to a much broader, more challenging list of sort of call to action that'd be more difficult for us to try and get some traction from. So what would success look like for that for us? So for people, it's about greater independence and choice. Importantly, having homes that remain suitable as someone's needs change. And that's both through development of new homes, but also looking at how we can retrofit our current homes so that they can adapt to changing need. And then improving people's health, well-being, their participation and their life outcomes generally by having a home that's suitable for them. For public services, so having homes that are suitable and adapted and last people throughout a lifetime will result in fewer delayed discharges, less crisis intervention, lower long-term healthcare costs. These are some of the benefits that can be experienced by having a suitable home where someone can live within the needs that they have. And for the housing system, it's for us having better data and planning. We have better data, we can plan better for the future. Having more accessible homes across all tenures is a benefit to all of us. And allowing us to have fairer use of our existing stock and new supply. So giving everyone access, or providing homes for everyone who needs it. In terms of further reading, so I did reference this is a really big area. Horizon released their call to action, but there are a number of other housing providers in Scotland who also released pre-election manifestos, some of whom differ from Horizon in that they have very large independent living parts of their business. So I've just put these up here as a bit of further reading for people. So Horizons is great. Please take the opportunity to have a read through it, and we'll be pressing on and doing as much as we can to engage with our new MSPs and get some traction and some interest in the areas that we've shared. But equally, our colleagues at Beeld, Hanover, Blackwood have all released really useful, interesting documents, and they're definitely worth a read. And a bit of learning for all of us together is that we've all realised we have to work much more closely together as well around these areas. And there's more to come on that over the next few months as we've got together as a group. And I'm hoping to take forward more collective work together to use our collective influence to try and make some of this change happen. So that was my last slide. Thank you very much, folks. I hope you found it useful, and happy to take any questions, which I think we're doing at the end.
Michael, thanks very much. A real thought-provoking way of setting the scene, both in terms of Scotland, but also putting that manifesto very much at the heart of, how we can create more accessible, adaptable environments. And I think you set that out really clearly, and some really good signposts to a number of other organisations and how they are also collaborating with you to take that agenda forward. And I love the way you finished off by at the bottom of that slide. Accessible housing is no longer a specialist issue; it's a national priority. I think it said, which I really think is a really important quote, and we may want to cite that in any subsequent social media posts. But thanks very much for starting it off. One of the organisations that you highlighted in that final slide was also Hanover. In Scotland, and we're delighted that we're joined by the chair of Hanover Scotland, Margaret. But I'm going to hand over to Amanda to sort of set the scene and introduce. Is it Margaret or Amanda kicking off on this particular?
It's me, Jeremy.
Oh, it is Margaret. So that's a good segue back to you. Sorry, I didn't have the agenda ahead of me. But thanks very much for bringing the team together. And I thought this blueprint is a fantastic document, and I really encourage people to use it. But you're going to learn why you need to use it from a fantastic team now. So over to you, Margaret.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully you can see my first slide there. So Jeremy and colleagues from LIN, thank you very much for the invitation to speak to you and colleagues today. So I'm Margaret Whoriskey. I am Head of Care and Wellbeing Innovation at the Digital Health and Care Innovation Centre, and I've had responsibility for the development of the digital blueprint that you're going to hear a bit about. But as Jeremy said, I've been on the board of Hanover Housing for about 6 or 7 years, and I took up the chair of Hanover Housing in September of last year. So I think it's really helpful for me to have that role as well as my DHI role in terms of housing. But Michael, yeah, you set the scene really well, I think, around that context and the digital blueprint. I think when you hear the opportunity it presents, I think feeds into a number of those priority areas that you identified. Just very briefly, I wanted to say a little bit about the DHI. So the Digital Health and Care Innovation Centre is one of 4 innovation centres in Scotland. Its name is in the title, Health and Care. I think we would say housing is very much part of that agenda. I think increasingly how housing and innovation in housing can address those challenges in health and care. We work across health and care and housing, academia, industry, and obviously people with lived experience. And there's a lot of information on our website that you can access if you're interested in that. Going forward, a big focus on co-design with citizens. So Glasgow School of Art is a partner with DHI. So again, we benefit from the expertise there in bringing co-design to a lot of our work. A lot of this you sort of referred to in general terms, Michael, but again, we're not short of strategies in Scotland. We've got lots of strategies. And I think part of the challenge sometimes is how do those strategies develop into real delivery and adoption. So the work we're doing in DHI on the blueprint sort of connects in with a lot of these strategic documents. Just very briefly, the blueprint work was developed in the context of the Moray Growth Deal, which was a UK-funded initiative. DHI led the Rural Centre of Excellence and a number of living labs relating to that. The Smart Housing, Smart Communities was one of those living labs. And as I say, the blueprint was commissioned in September of last year. And you're going to hear about how that's developed and its recent launch just a few weeks ago. While the blueprint is relevant, predominantly, I suppose, was developed in the context of rurality, it's got much wider application, and you'll hear from that from Kirstin and Amanda. So we looked at initial mapping of smart housing initiatives across the UK to inform the approach. We collaborated with our Housing Innovation Centre BEST, Moray Council Housing Mix. As I said, the commission was to archetype and evolve CapEx. And we also established an expert advisory group, which helped to, I suppose, provide some advice and challenge to the work. And the blueprint was launched just a few weeks ago. So on that point, I think I'll be moving on to Kirstin. So if I can stop sharing now, if this works, and Kirstin will take over.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully everyone can now see my slides. That's great, good. So yes, I'm Kirstin Assheton. I'm an associate at Architype. We worked on the architectural aspects of the blueprint, so I'm going to share a bit more about that just now, and then I'll hand over to Amanda, who'll talk about the technology and the early adopter work that we're doing. But first, I just want to set the scene a little bit. As you know, our domestic environments have a really profound impact on our physical and mental well-being. This is our slide, which describes what we would see as three converging crises impacting the home. We've highlighted population health, climate and the cost of living, and the rapid advancement of technology. So that's plenty of crises we're getting going on with. But the exciting idea posited by the blueprint is that it's possible for the home to have a long-term positive impact on health, well-being, independence and resilience. So what is the blueprint? We have described it as a scaffold or a framework, a way of organising an approach to design and technology. It's set around 3 horizon points, which I'll come back to. Those horizon points are split further into 3 ambition points. And it provides a strategic model of a potential design. What it's not is not a fixed specification or prescriptive methodology. It's not a fully developed architectural proposal. But it boils down to 3 tools. We've got the guide, which is a PDF document, which provides the principles and the evidence base. The matrix, which is an Excel document, which provides a structure for what and when. And then what we've described as the model, as a conceptual model for a site-agnostic, new build, single-story, 2-bedroom smart home. The guide and the matrix provide different entry points. We would see that a policymaker might find the guide most useful. A designer or a housing provider might find the matrix useful to provide specific components or sequencing ideas. The 3 horizons, we've got horizon 1, which is set as 1 to 3 years. That's described as the foundation layer, and that's what's deployable just now. Horizon 2, 3 to 7 years, has been defined as predictive intelligence, and horizon 3 at 7+ years is defined as autonomous and connected. Horizon 3 gives us an ambitious future vision, which includes, but isn't limited to, advanced AI and regenerative architectural practices. So the blueprint includes what we've described as the model. So this is our design for a 2-bedroom dwelling at horizon 2, level 3 as the set points. That's the most ambitious level within horizon 2. We picked this as an ambitious future point, but one that could be seen as within reach. So the concept has got a simple basis. The plan is designed to be flexible and to accommodate changing physical, emotional and social needs. There's an open plan living space, a zone for bedrooms, bathrooms and study space, which is reconfigurable. And then there's a spine in between those that provides storage and building services. The form is deliberately simple. It's based around traditional forms of architecture in Scotland. And this simple form means that it is adaptable across sites and is really energy efficient as well. So the large plan that you can see on the screen shows a simplification of this base plan. And then on the right, it shows the same footprint having different configurations. So the top diagram is a scenario with a wheelchair accessible bedroom and a wheelchair accessible shower room attached. The middle plan has a family bathroom and 2 bedrooms and a home workspace. And the bottom plan shows a 3-bedroom with a family bathroom. The table on the left here shows the key operational ambitions for Horizon 2 Level 3. So this design is proposed to meet the requirements of the Passive House Standard, whilst also meeting targets for upfront carbon. The design is proposed to meet the requirements of, skip that bit. So it's taking into account construction elements, including thermal insulation, which is including an enhanced timber frame for the increased insulation, design for airtightness, use of bio-based materials, opportunity for reclaimed materials, and also design for reuse, and that enabling a stable temperature, particularly important as we're learning at the moment, and excellent internal air quality. In terms of the structural strategy, we proposed timber frame or I-joist superstructure using Scottish grown timber and concrete-free substructure. Part of the blueprint has been the calculation of embodied carbon and target setting for embodied and operational carbon. I'm not going to go into this in detail, but if anyone is particularly interested, there's much more information on this in the guide. And I want to just quickly touch on retrofit as well. The model design is based on a new build scenario, but the thinking behind it is applicable to a retrofit scenario. But obviously retrofit comes with its own challenges, and you can see some of these on the screen. The blueprint ultimately is about people, comfort and health. The design has been designed to be well lit, comfortable, flexible, making use of natural materials and finishes. The technology and sensors have been designed to not be immediately obvious, but designed to create a home which is making use of a holistic and integrated approach. It should be a home which is affordable to run, adaptable, and creating an environment which promotes lifelong health and well-being. And on that, I'll hand over to Amanda.
Thanks, Kirstin, and Kirstin's going to move my slides on for me. Not quite yet, but that'll be fine. Don't worry. This section on technology has been created, curated, authored by Gordon Bain from Evolve CapEx. I am clearly not Gordon Bain. He is sunning himself somewhere in Asia, and I will do the best representation I can do of what is an incredibly detailed and complex set of materials that he's put together. He is also the author of the affordability annex that Kirstin mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. As Kirstin said, the guide is focused on principles. And one of those principles is you don't start with the technology, you start with the outcome. You need to define what it is you're trying to achieve, whether that's about eliminating dampness or addressing loneliness. And only from there move on through those different components of theme, horizon, tackling the issues about connectivity before you identify the technology that you want to use. And critically coming in the end to that governance question. Who sees what data, when and why, and with whose consent? It works backwards, as the slide says, and it's a practical workflow for moving from need to specification. Next slide, please. 6 stacks on the technology side, 1 living system, intersectional by design. Those 6 well-being outcomes about energy and comfort, environmental safety, and so on. As Kirstin has already said, but it's worth emphasizing, at the foundation of the blueprint is that ambition that the home becomes a coherent prevention platform and it stops treating housing, care, energy, and mental well-being as separate boxes. The home is where they meet. Next slide, please. This was developed primarily for rural, and connectivity, as you will all know, is a really big issue within rural Scotland, as in rural England as well. And so designing for a rural failure first is absolutely critical. We will go nowhere on the technology unless people trust in the resilience of the technology. So this talks about the different levels of technology that are needed in relation to the different horizons. And again, more detail in the design guide itself, in the guide. Next slide, please. The other important principle to emphasize is about what happens with the data. I mentioned governance, but the principle is that it's local first, that data is held, the raw behavioral data stays local by default, and that it's uploaded to the cloud on an optional basis. So only at that point at which the resident is not resident control, not a feature, it's a permission structure. So you start with the assumption that it stays local until there is an active agreement about how that data moves to different uses and is shared with different people, family, friends, statutory services, whoever it is that is the resident wishes to share it with. Next slide, please. The costings, which are part of the affordability annex in relation to the capital expenditure for the digital component, is, we think, modest at 4,350 for Horizon 1 Level 2, the deployable credible baseline. It, we think, should become a minimum standard for a healthy home, where housing and fabric and resilience is there. It is focused on prevention. It gives lower demand on energy. And for the landlord, it offers fewer failures and better asset management. That is all doable at H1 Level 2 and at 4,350. Whistle stop through it from all of us. We have wanted to move on from just producing a document to how people can get involved. And the next couple of slides set that out. So we want to move from interest to evidence, to convert sector curiosity, and we've had plenty of it, into scoped pilot, costed choices, and evidence for scale. Only at scale can we bring those costs down and get this becoming a mainstream, and that's what we're all talking about. Michael talked about it, and the rest of us will, and I'm sure Carla will say the same thing. We have got 6 organisations that are involved in early adopter uptake of the blueprint, some at different stages of work, and we are exploring how we might use and create a knowledge hub for all of the evidence that emerges from that. And my last slide, I think, is just 3 routes in that we've identified: a readiness review, could this apply to us? Adopter sprint run, what would a pilot look like? And how do we deploy and prove it? Thank you. And I think I'll go back to Margaret now. We're seeing a meeting.
Sorry, I was on mute. Can you see the slide? Is that sharing?
We did a minute
Yes.
ago.
Okay, I'll let me just go
Stopped
back
again.
Okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, people can access all the material. It's gone again.
We're looking at a message.
I've only got.
Maybe
Right.
Kirstin could share it. There we go. What about that?
Sorry, I don't know. I think maybe I was clicking the wrong screen or something. It was my Teams link that was showing up. So yeah, so I think it's really just to let people know where to access all the materials that Kirstin and Amanda have been talking about. So you can go onto the DHI website and generally, but there's also, I think, the QR code for accessing the report itself, which I think was on the other slide, that one there. So please do look at the materials. As I say, there's a summary document as well, sort of a high-level 2-page summary. You can access the main guide by clicking on a link and giving your email address, and those resources, including the matrix and the affordability and the cost calculator, as well as the video, can all be accessed, and do reach out and contact us if you'd like to find out a bit more. So that's probably all from us, Jeremy, in terms of a very quick canter through. And I know it's a lot of information, but hopefully it's given you a flavour for the opportunity that there is. And it really, I think, builds very much on what Michael was saying about what we need to do in terms of our housing and fit for now, for the present and for the future. So thank you.
Absolutely, Margaret. And can I thank you, all 3 of you, Margaret, Amanda and Kirstin, for such a well, it wasn't a whirlwind. Actually, you set it out really well in terms of what the vision does and the accompanying documents. So I'm sure people who are either listening in today or be watching the recording will want to take this forward. And I think, Amanda, you also set out a next steps potential as well. And I mentioned in my introduction that we're very proud to be working with the Vivenza Foundation on a new program called SHAPE, Suitable Housing for an Aging Population. You know, I can see those sort of collaborations and coalitions helping to inform our thinking as we take that SHAPE program forward. So keep those discussions both with ourselves and with Vivenza, because it'd be great if we had a really robust bid from a Scottish partner as well. But also,
very keen to have that conversation.
Brilliant.
Jeremy.
Well, let's follow that up. And I think, Kirstin, in terms of your slides, in terms of what I got out of that, in terms of both the build quality, but also the utilization and usability, well, I think that's a fantastic segue to what Carla's doing as well. So without further ado, can I welcome Carla? Carla is not only Norscot, she's one of our Housing LIN future leaders, and also has a UKRI fellowship in future leadership as well. So watch out for Carla in not just for the next 10 minutes, but for years to come. So Carla, over to you on the modern methods of construction and how that links into enabling community-led housing.
Yes, thank you so much, Jeremy, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carla Resendiz, Product Development Manager at Norscot, and as Jeremy said, Innovate UK Future Leader Fellow. I was part of the Future Leader Fellowship or program from the Housing LIN, and it has been a great journey so far, a very good adventure. So yes, as Jeremy said, I'm gonna just share with you what we are doing with our Wellbe Homes range, especially to enable community-led housing projects. And as you said, hopefully, I love that Kirstin mentioned the timber frame construction. So we're gonna talk about it in a little bit more detail. But first of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit about Norscot. We are a company, an SME established in 1984 in the Scottish Highlands. We manufacture timber frame kits and also other products like windows, doors, and other building components. We are a company committed to sustainable, accessible, and enjoyable homes. And the company has a strong culture of innovation and product development. And so far, we have supplied more than 1,000 timber kit homes over the last 40 years, and not only to Scotland, but also to England. So I think to echo what Michael said at the beginning, and also this continuum or this connection between the home environment and the impact with health and well-being that were mentioned previously, homes play a critical role in supporting independence, health, and well-being. And people's needs change over time, but many homes are difficult to adapt. So in this case, Norscot started to have a look at these more adaptable, accessible homes, as the majority of our customers came looking for a forever home. And basically, just now we are exploring how people use, adapt, and imagine future homes. We are combining design, technology, architecture, and social research, especially about how we look at ourselves in the future and how we imagine our home environments. And basically, we want to focus on creating homes that remain useful throughout different stages of our lives. So that's why the Wellbe Homes were launched in 2021. When we designed this concept, we came with different user groups, and we realized that the one that resonated the most with the needing accessible, adaptable homes were the community groups. And I'm gonna stop here a little bit just to mention why the modern methods of construction should be considered. And as I said, I love that Kirstin mentioned the timber frame construction. Basically, we're talking about factory-built precision, faster construction, reduce waste and improve sustainability, and flexible and adaptable delivery. So there are different ranges. timber frame panels are one option. There's open, closed panels, but there's also other modular systems like bathroom, kitchen pots, etc. So the case study that we're looking at the moment, you can see in these photos what happens after the homes leave our factory here in Bauer. And this is the development of 3 units that were erected within 1 week. The manager of this development previously had similar experience with other methods of construction. And they mentioned that normally this same development would have taken, instead of 1 week, 1 month at least. So that would be a comparison about the benefits, specifically speed on site. But it's very important that the benefits, there's benefits as we were discussing now, but there's also barriers. So there are barriers to continue deploying MMC specifically in the UK and in Scotland. For example, companies like us, we are a small company with 60 people, and we can deliver to certain amount of homes, but therefore to support or to tackle the housing crisis, there's a lot of more volume required. So in this case, what we're aiming to study, specifically with this case study, we want to see first, well, yes, do this post-occupancy evaluation, assessing the performance of the homes versus the design stage simulations, but also we want to ask, how can we remove these barriers and amplify the benefits to deliver accessible, adaptable homes through community-led housing? So that's what we're looking at the moment. Specifically, we know through Communities Housing Trust and the communities in the south of Scotland, there are various initiatives of community-led housing. So at the moment, we want to reach out to these groups and see if we can explore the early stages of their design to see how can we develop solutions from the factory perspective, designed for manufacturing and assembly. So that's where we're at the moment. Again, we're happy to continue the conversation. If there's any community-led housing group out there, please reach out, and we would be delighted to just speak with you and understand what are the needs of your project. Here's my contact details as well. Thank you so much.
Sorry about that. My screen seems to have frozen. But Carla, thank you very, very much. And that's really exciting. And yeah, we would love to continue. And I see that Chris has also uploaded your blog in the chat. So that's fantastic about your ongoing work around that. And I think it dovetails really neatly, both in terms of the timber frame that Kirstin sort of highlighted, but also more broadly as well. And delegates, you may not know, but Carla also does lectures over in Mexico as well. So she's spreading the word beyond the UK too. So that's a really good sort of from a global reach. I'm conscious we've got a few questions that were posted as well. Now, as I said, my screen froze and I've actually lost the questions. Chris or Jerome, is it possible to reload them? Or has anybody else got access to them?
Yeah, I can only see one question actually in the answered questions, which Amanda is already answered in writing.
So
yeah,
I'm happy to do it in.
Yeah, if you can talk about that.
Then I mean, there's almost a question back to Alex, who posted the question, because he asked about where we thought the greatest opportunities were, and I thought, well, where's got lots of different meanings. So I gave him a fairly wide answer, that it doesn't seem to me that there are particular restrictions. We are keen to develop the blueprint beyond new build. It's definitely more detailed, as we all know, on new build than it is on retrofit, but we know that the big game is around retrofit, and that's where we would like to go next. But in terms of those 6 early adopter organizations that I mentioned, there are, I can't add them up, I'd have to read them off in my head, and I can't do that, but at least 3 of them are in relation to retrofit. I think there are only a couple which are new builds. So it's pretty wide, different needs groups, older people, some kind of, developments as in retirement homes, others which are more institutional settings. So we've got a fairly wide selection. Alex, I don't know whether or not that answers your question.
Perhaps you can put a thumbs up or question mark in the react box on the screen. Yeah. Well, thanks. I was wondering if I could ask a supplementary question to that, because in terms of the opportunities beyond the sort of the fabric of a community, I had the privilege of being in the UKRI Healthy Aging Challenge, which funded the Peoplehood project in Dundee, which was not just looking at the new build but also about retrofitting the community from a people first approach. And I was just struck by all your presentations about co-production, putting people at the centre of the community. Is there a sort of a national movement that this could be allied to in Scotland, which covers that health, housing and social care interface, but is very much a people-centric sort of approach, that peoplehood sort of style of development? Any thoughts on that? Perhaps Michael first.
There's definitely an opportunity there, isn't there? And I think it's a space that we... I think in my present, we included it in our manifesto, and it being a space that we think we could definitely do a lot more, and we need to do more. I think one of the advantages, I think we've all spoken a lot about trying to move from a reactive space to being more proactive in our approach, and what that allows us to do is to be more inclusive, because when you're being reactive, it's usually at pace, it's usually dealing with crisis, and that's really difficult. If we can get ourselves into a place where we're being much more proactive around all this type of work, that allows you to have a much more planned approach. And I would say there's definitely an appetite for that. I think my observation is there is some close work takes place across housing, health and social care, various different partners, but it could be better. And a lot of the reason it's not better is because we're in that reactive phase so often. And if we could be in that sort of proactive, preventative phase more, I think we'd do better at that.
Yeah, and I think where budgets are tight, it's difficult to be that preventative and sort of, because you're having to deal with those crises. But last week, as part of our happy hours, we looked at some of the work in England around what we call local area coordination, and it just felt that sort of community engagement thing would sort of align itself very neatly. And I was just wondering, would the Envision project think about that sort of local area coordination? Can you see that sort of fitting in neatly in terms of the sort of the wider community interface?
Jeremy, sorry, I can't work out how to put my virtual hand up, but no, I think that whole sort of opportunity, as well as the challenge of breaking down the silos across housing, health and sort of care, and very much that, place-based, community-centric, person-centered, I think is certainly something I think people get. I think the challenge is, again, how we move that forward. In DHI, we launched a digital care collaborative Scotland in December, and that was really bringing together sort of social care, social work, housing in the context of integrated care, but trying to promote and support innovation, maximise knowledge exchange, position Scotland in a more, I suppose, supportive way around creating the conditions for levering some inward investment, learning from the projects like Peoplehood, to say how can we further support adoption, because we've lots of examples of interesting initiatives and innovation projects, but the challenge, probably not just in Scotland, but the challenge is how do we move some of those to being more BAU and adoption. So again, I'll put the link of the DCCS in the chat, but we're certainly wanting to look at how do we promote and support the blueprint and the learning from the blueprint within that collaborative. And again, keen for people to join the collaborative and look at to see how we can collectively draw together those assets and opportunities as well. So, yeah, I think...
I mean, this is a tough one, isn't it? Jeremy. I mean, you mentioned the one about budgets are tight. And forever, it feels like in the housing world, we've been arguing that good housing supports prevention, and that if you invest in the building, in services, in adaptations, and now we're adding in technology, if you put it in at the outset and enable your homes to have it, then you're going to reap benefits, not only just for the individual's well-being, but also have those benefits to landlords in terms of lower costs and more effective maintenance, early. So there are plenty of things. We just have to win that argument about investment at the outset, rather than doing it after the event through retrofits and adaptations, which is not the most sensible. Economically, financially, it's not the most sensible time to do it. We know what to do. We just have to keep that argument and keep that push. And as Margaret says, it feels like in Scotland, there's now a growing awareness about the importance of a non-silo-based working. I mean, it's always been an issue, but there seems to be more of a will at the minute to challenge it. We just hope that will translate into something to do with pound signs.
Yeah, no, quite. And while you were talking there, Amanda, Susie's put something up in the chat, which is around the work, the SFHA, the Scottish Federation of Housing Associations, if you're not familiar with them, on also their independent living strategy. And I think, Michael, you had a link to that in your presentation. But Susie, great to have you with us, and also SFHA to be on the SHAPE advisory board as well, for those of you who don't know it. I think Debbie sort of chairs that independent living strategy group, so we'll definitely want to come back to you on that. But I was just wondering whether there's any other views you may have around placemaking, because the Housing LIN a few years back did a piece of work looking very much at intergenerational living as opposed to older adults, on called A Caring Place. And I'm just wondering whether that it's not just modern methods of construction, but it's also modern methods of care that we need to think about. And Carla, I was just wondering about that interface between construction and care, and how real is that? You talked about some of those outcomes that you're delivering. How real is this starting to populate in terms of people who are coming to you about what they want to deliver?
In this case, for us, we see that we're still quite far from the formal care. But what I think is that we are overlooking also the informal care, and we have like a theory that we could possibly readjust how we perceive informal care in terms of sometimes the negative connotations that are associated with it, and how sometimes people might feel like a burden and that type of stuff. So what we think is that with design, and really as the other speakers mentioned, like co-designing this together with users and also like carers, I think there could be a way to overcome this and basically to shift from negative to positive, and that's something that we would be keen to see, But I think it's something that basically our health system and basically our care system relies also a lot in informal care. So I think we have to look at it as well.
Yeah, that's great. No, and I think, Kirstin, I'm not sure you've had an opportunity to come in on any of the conversation so far, but in England, we've been looking with Homes England to developing the healthy home standards. Do you see something from the work you're doing very much part of that debate, and whether that's something Scotland can take further forward? Obviously, they've had the consultation on varying needs, and hopefully we'll be sort of commissioning some work on that upcoming. So is there any final thoughts that you may have about that sort of creating healthy homes which adopt that envisioned principles and blueprint?
It's so important, because obviously part of good design is creating spaces which are healthy, and that's a big aspect. So yes, it's definitely something that would be really valuable. Is it worth me just jumping in? There was a question in the chat as well. Just to adaptability. I've just lost who asked the question, but it was David Ogilvie asked a question about retrofitting sort of fittings for adaptability. Absolutely, a really good question. And there's a bit been said about designing in for accessibility at the start, and that would be a key aspect of that, is making sure you're making allowance for fittings, because that in a passive house context could be problematic. So making sure that there's allowance for that support, whether that's buttressing or whether that's having a more robust airtightness line. So you can get board-based airtightness lines rather than membranes. So yes, thinking about the detailing and what might be necessary right at the start is absolutely critical. So yeah, good question, David, on that.
Thank you for that. Well, look, we're coming to a close, and Jaquel raises some really interesting points in the chat as well, and she talks about one of her colleagues, Rachel, and how the work on the design guide that they have developed. Can I again encourage people to have a look at that as first and foremost a great document as well. But I think what we've also looked, while our focus perhaps has been around new build today, I think we have looked at retrofit and adaptations too, and that is very much part of our broader remit at the Housing LIN. And before I sort of wrap up, just to draw people's attention to next week's happy hour, which is in partnership with the Royal College of Occupational Therapy and their recent guide and several practitioner and operational toolkits that have been subsequently developed on building for a healthy home. So again, I do encourage you, and I can see Chris has been on the delegates today, and in fact Rachel, who Jaquel refers to as one of our speakers. So do ask you to sign up for next week's happy hour. But on behalf of the Housing LIN, can I thank Michael, Margaret, Amanda, Kirstin, and Carla for fantastic presentations this afternoon, really showcasing what's really developing something I think which will be inclusive in future, for not just for the sector but importantly for the citizens in Scotland in terms of accessible homes going forward. We may have a long way still to go, but we're definitely your presentations are very much in that right direction. Can I thank Chris and Jerome behind the scenes for making this a smooth operation as possible. I apologise for my website slight loss earlier, and I encourage you all to join us again at a future happy hour. And thank you very much, and have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.